Calling all SCP Foundation staff, this is Dr. Theron Sherman. Do you read me? We are anomalously broadcasting from Site-42. Please make certain that you use your SCP Foundation approved, encrypted YouTube account to like, share, and subscribe this stream. Make sure you do not use your public-facing account. Again, Steve. Alright, it looks like you are getting our signal loud and clear through the YouTube space. Thank you, chat, for letting us know. We are going live in 3, 2, 1. Hey there, Foundation staff. Better late than never, right? This is Dr. Theron Sherman, but you can call me Sherm. Welcome to another anomalous broadcast from Site-42. For anybody unfamiliar with our show, the rundown goes like this. Number 1. I read you an SCP document, or tale, or something from the wiki. B. I open up the floor to the community to discuss what we've read. We're often visited by SCP authors, staff, and fans, and if we're real lucky, the author of the article themselves shows up to share some insight. Remember that if you'd like to join the conversation yourself, I will be monitoring the chat in between chapters and answering questions, as will my guest. Also, remember that if you enjoyed the show, leave a like and comment to let us know, subscribe and hit the bell, and if you really want to help us out, become a patron at patreon.com/site42. Tonight, we are going through SCP-3421, titled Cell Phone Trees by author glewmie. And luckily for us, glewmie is here with us tonight, and I will bring them on in 3, 2, 1. Hello, glewmie! Did I get your audio? I did not hear you on that introduction.
Hello, I'm
There
glewmie,
you are.
horror game streamer and occasional SCP author.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we're reading SCP-3421, which I believe is your only SCP, right?
No, I actually co-authored another one, 4457. Yes.
What's that one about? Give us a little plug before we get into the main stuff.
SCP-4457 is titled Asopods, and it's about isopods that replace your digestive tract.
Those are the things that squick me the most. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like a different tone than 3421, but it's meant to be funny, right? It's less dark than this one.
Wait a minute. What's the title of it one more time?
Asopods.
Oh my god, I've read that one on the channel.
Oh really? Oh yeah,
I think I've done that one.
Yeah, it was Popsy Oak and me. We co-authored it together.
What's the number one more time?
4457.
I'm gonna Google this. I think I have read that for the channel. Asopods. I remember that. I'm sad to say, I think it was actually a different ass-related anomaly. Because the one, if this is the right one, the one I'm thinking of is the fish swim into your mouth or your anus. And then
That's a different one.
Okay, that's a different one. I haven't done yours, but I got 2 nickels. It's not a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
How strange.
All right, well, on to your article. Is there any preamble for 3421 you'd like to give us before we go into it?
Before we go into it, I don't think so. I think there's a lot to say afterwards, but I like my media where you kind of go into it unprepared, and then you get to like evaluate pieces of fiction like from whole cloth. And so I present my works without preamble.
All right, I am going to pull up the image for the SCP here. Nope, that's the wrong button. I want that image. Yes. So we have a seemingly normal tree, but obviously something must be anomalous about it. I will take it from the top. If at any point you feel the want to interject for context or anything like that, feel free. But unless you do, I'm just going to keep talking. Ready?
Let's go.
All right. Item number 3421. Clearance level 2. Container class, Euclid. Disruption class, Kennick. Risk class, Caution. Special containment procedures. Due to their tendency to integrate with local infrastructure and the expertise required to uproot them, instances of SCP-3421 are to be recovered by Mobile Task Force Theta-4-1, codename Leavesdroppers. Good one. These instances are to be stored separately in purpose-built Faraday cages in the Anomalous Technologies Wing at Site-66. Cages are to receive bi-weekly maintenance. Necessary repairs are to be conducted within 24 hours. Newly discovered instances of SCP-3421-1 are to be removed from soil upon discovery and kept in Faraday bags until brought to storage at Site-66. Instances are to be stored separately in radio-shielded lockers away from sunlight. We have an instance of SCP-3421 prior to containment, shown here in the image. Description: SCP-3421 is a species of anomalous organic cellular towers. Towers closely resemble non-anomalous towers camouflaged to resemble trees. Footnote: due to aesthetic concerns and public scrutiny, new municipal projects involving the establishment of cellular towers often call for them to be camouflaged or stylized to better blend in with its surroundings. End of footnote. Instances integrate with the surrounding infrastructure and operate as cellular towers within local network specifications. The branches of SCP-3421 have photovoltaic properties, which enable it to continue operations during daylight hours in the event that power is disconnected. SCP-3421 produces novel transmissions as well as acting as standard cellular relays. It is unknown whether SCP-3421 instances use these transmissions to communicate, or the transmissions are merely a byproduct of the object's primary anomalous effect. SCP-3421-1 is the designation for mobile telephones that have received anomalous transmissions from SCP-3421. In the presence of soil and near favorable power line conditions, instances of SCP-3421-1 can mature into full instances of SCP-3421 in as little as 72 hours. Wow, that's fast. Discovery. Redacted, a wireless concealment company, developed the first camouflage cell towers in early 1992. The first instance of SCP-3421 was discovered on April 5th in 1992 in Tucson, Arizona, after city officials started receiving complaints about improperly zoned cell tower constructions. Foundation personnel embedded in the planning department of the city investigated the lead. Mobile Task Force Theta-4, codenamed Gardeners, was dispatched to contain the newly discovered instance. After a review of the city, redacted a number, but it seems to be 2 or 3 digits, other instances were found and contained. Mobile Task Force Theta-4-1 was formed afterwards for ongoing containment operations. The number of extant uncontained instances of SCP-3421 is unknown. Addendum 3421-A. On May 5th, 2016, an instance of SCP-3421 was discovered in redacted, United States. A field study on the reproductive mechanisms of the anomaly was authorized, and Mobile Task Force Theta-4-1 was dispatched to the location with instructions to collect data before moving the instance to containment. Signals being relayed through the instance were intercepted and recorded for close study. A transcript of notable logs are attached. And so from this point on, we are looking at many audio logs. We are looking at audio logs recorded by the 3421 instance. Collapsible number 1, audio log 3421-1A. Forward. Callers have been identified as Jane Atherton, a florist at Redacted Store, and Lee Browning, a patient at Redacted Hospital. Begin log. Call connected. June 6, 2016, 3:23 p.m. Hey you, doing okay? Well, I'm still kicking. They let me walk around the floor today. It sucks because I get really exhausted just after getting down the hall. Yeah? The doctors tell me to keep it up, though. Should be back to my old self in no time. I'm sorry I'm not around as much as I would like to be. At least I can still call you. You can always call me. When do you think you can visit next? I can't wait to see you again. Extraneous conversation redacted. End log. Next log. Begin log. Connected call 5/7/2016. 1:21 a.m. Hey, Lee, what's up? Is everything okay? Around today? What? Around? What? I'm sorry, love. I have work in the morning. All day, too. Thought I told you. Time doctors. Time doctors? You mean Doctor Who? Or are you feeling okay? Sucks. Okay. Are you feeling all right? You sound really choppy. Call you. Still kicking. Walking around. Still kicking. What? Lee, I love you, but it's really late, and I think the phone connection is bad right now. Get some rest. It sounds like you need it. Call. I'll you. End log. Begin log. Call connected. May 7th, 2016. 2:21 p.m. Hey, I just got on my lunch break. I'm still really sorry I can't be there today. How are you feeling? That's all right. I know you work Saturdays. I really dig the pain meds they have me on. Well, they're kind of making you super loopy. What do you mean, loopy? In what way? Well, you called me yesterday in the middle of the night, and you were making no sense at all. You mentioned Doctor Who or something? Oh, weird. I hate that show. Yeah, you said that. I don't remember calling you, though. Exactly what kind of meds do they have you on? I'm not sure. That is so weird. How could I have called you and not remembered it? Loopy is still better than pain, though, right? I suppose. Maybe I should write down some of the things you say when you're all crazy. Maybe. It might be good for a laugh when I finally get out of here. You don't think I'm actually crazy, though, right? Never. Extraneous conversation redacted. End log. We end this collapsible. We go to the next collapsible, which is audio log 3421-1B. Begin log. Call connected. May 10th, 2016. 11:06 a.m. Extraneous conversation redacted. I promise I'll visit soon. I miss you. I miss being outside. Remember when we used to go to redacted park? The park. We had our first date there. Remember when we carved our names in that tree? I remember that. That is actually super unhealthy for trees. Laughter heard from both sides. Yeah. Jane and Lee forever. Gosh, how long ago was that? Feels like forever. I feel like I've been in this room forever. At least I have this beautiful plant you brought me. It's an orchid. Orchid, right. The last tests were good, though. They said you were going to get out soon, right? They said the tests were hopeful, but the imaging hasn't gotten back to us yet. Extraneous conversation redacted. End log. Begin log. Call connected. May 12th, 2016. 6:23 a.m. Morning, Lee. You're up early. What's up? Hopeful. Outside. What are you talking about, love? Gosh, how long? What? I didn't quite catch that last part. Crazy, crazy, crazy forever. I don't think you're crazy. In this room. Dig tree, imaging. Hey, I'll call you later, okay? I need to get ready for work. Loopy, dig tree, imaging. Call you then. End log. Begin log. Call connected. May 12th, 2016. 4:54 p.m. Hey, how are you doing today? How do you feel? I'm sorry we couldn't talk this morning. That's okay. I slept in until noon. Are you sure you didn't call me? Pretty sure. I could have sworn, though. Your voice sounded all weirdly inflected and choppy. Couldn't make out what you were saying at all. My phone was off. Weird. I haven't been sleeping well. Maybe I dreamed it. Hey, listen, so imaging got back to us. Good news, I hope. They say it might be too deep to operate. Oh, what does that mean? I don't know. My surgeon said they are going to try the only thing left. They mentioned it was a risky procedure. What do you mean, risky? Never mind. I think it'll work. Lee, I trust you. Can you promise me you'll fight either way? I promise. A slight pause. Can I ask you to do something for me? Yes, of course. I would like you to visit me again. Will they let me? I'll have to ask a nurse, but they should let me see you. I definitely want to come see you. If you do, can you please bring me a treat? Of course. From where? Oh, anywhere. Surprise me. Extraneous conversation redacted. End log. We're entering the next collapsible audio log 3421-1C. Begin log. Call connected. May 13th, 2016, 1:23 p.m. Hey, I'm just down the street. I'll be up in a bit. Remember, treat. Yes, I have your treat for you. Outside, park, treat your imaging? Say again. The connection is acting up again. Dig, treat, nurse, plant. I'm downstairs right now. I'll be up in a minute. Just hang tight. Surprise! Dig, treat, eat, treat, dig, dig. Okay, love. End log. End collapsible. Audio log 3421-1D. Begin log. Call connected. May 14th, 2016, 7:03 p.m. Hey, you. I just got home from work. Hey. So, tomorrow's the big day, huh? Yep. Listen, I am going to keep fighting while I still can, but when I do go, don't have them bury me. Lee, stop. I want to be cremated. Lee, please, don't talk like that. No, I need to get real. What if I don't make it? How can you say that? How can you say you'll fight and then turn around and make funeral plans? I'm sorry. You're right. I should say positive, right? I hate that we're talking about this over the phone. They won't let me have any visitors before the operation. Lee, I'm sorry. No, I am. No, really, I'm sorry for stressing you out on the day before. You're not stressing me out. Jane, I love hearing your voice. I love you. I love you. I have to go now. Get some rest. End log. Next collapsible. Audio log 3421-1E. Begin log. Call connected. May 21st, 2016, 6:03 p.m. Hello? Jane, it's Lee. What? No, who is this really? No, beautiful, it's really me. This isn't funny. You can't do this to me. No, I'm real. I'm hanging up now. End log. Begin log. Call connected. May 21st, 2016, 6:06 p.m. Hello? Hello, Jane. Stop calling me! End log. Begin log. Call connected. May 21st, 2016, 6:08 p.m. Who is this? Jane, please. How can you be real? Her funeral was Sunday. Prove to me that you're really her. I was there when she was buried. Still kicking. How? How can you be her? What was the treat I brought you in the hospital? I don't remember. You're a real piece of work. You know that? I don't cremated. What? What did you just say? I want to be cremated. Please. Please stop calling me. End log. Next collapsible. Audio log 3421-1F. Begin log. Call connected. May 21st, 2016, 6:11 p.m. What do you want from me? Please, I promise it's me. Remember the park? What? Jane and Lee, forever. God, Lee, I miss you so much. I miss you. I want to see you again. How? Can I ask you to do something for me? What do you need? I miss you so much. Remember the park? Of course I do. Please, can I ask you to do something for me? Anything. Please, bury your phone. What? Bury your phone in the park. Plant your phone in the park. What are you talking about? I can come back to my old self if you please do something for me. How does that work? It's the only way. No, explain that to me, Lee. I'm confused. Please, can I ask you to do something for me? Dig deep down and bury your phone. Dig, plant. In the park? Where in the park? Anywhere outside in the park. Please do dig. I'll do it. I can't wait to see you again. I love you. End log. Closing statement. An instance of SCP-3421-1 was recovered buried in redacted park on May 23, 2016. Tests concerning the properties and capabilities of SCP-3421-1 are pending further approval. The previous owner of the instance was located on May 24, 2016, and Class B amnestics were administered. End log. Woo! Woo! All right, so I will admit, I had pretty fun reading most of that. I was a little worried towards the end because artistically, I wasn't sure how natural you wanted Lee's voice to be at that point. If you still wanted it to be like clips, or if you would wanted it to like reach apex, so it was like almost fluid human at that point.
So when I was developing the article, I was really focused on. So for those who haven't picked it up yet, the times when the anomaly is speaking, they're only using chops of voice clips that were spoken directly by Lee, who is in the hospital. And so ideally, if I had this voice acted or something, it would be two people. And during the conversations between Jane and Lee, it would be like a natural conversation. And then the conversations between Jane and the tree, it's the voice clips that were clipped directly from the previous conversations. And so towards the end, when the tree has enough material from the conversations that they've been having with Jane, to construct a full sentence, it's still, I think I never wanted it to sound entirely natural, but I did want it to sound like close to it, right? And so that's why you see, like in the last collapsible, in the last log, they repeat like full sentences, because like why throw away a full sentence if you already have a full sentence, right? Which is, can I ask you to do something for me? Which is something that Lee said earlier a couple of weeks ago.
That is just a well done version of like technical writing and foreshadowing to give yourself that, like, those phrases that you can reassemble and grow throughout the paragraphs until you finally have your ending. That's super dope.
Yeah, thank you. I that was really difficult, actually, trying to get it so that the trying to make it so that the reader understood what was happening at the same time that Jane, it was like plausible that Jane couldn't figure out what was happening. That was like difficult.
That makes sense. At a point, you're like, something's going on here. And so, yes, between an amount of static and at least it being the right voice, I feel like you have plausibly made it so that Jane could be confused, which is a good work.
I think the major thing that I was playing off of was like Jane of course is emotionally compromised because she has a partner who, you know, she loves, who's like in the hospital. They don't get to spend any time together, and you know, towards the end she just died, right? Like Lee dies because the procedure didn't work or whatever. I intentionally left it vague, right? It had like, what did Lee have? She had, you know, dead lesbian syndrome, which
dead lesbian syndrome,
right? Like I really, at one point I was upset that because, you know, we have this like push and you're like, no more dead lesbians, no more dead gays, right? And in media, because it's cheap, but it's also like I wanted to write a tragic love story. But I didn't want it to be straight.
So you're walking that nice representation line, and I'm sorry to do this, but I have to.
Yeah, no, literally.
The trope is called bury your gays.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you intended the fact that at least Lee wants to be cremated, not buried.
Yeah, no, that was like I'm sure that was something that I thought of. But it it was something like, it was something that was wholly weird that would so towards the end, right, when the tree is trying to prove itself to Jane, and it's like, oh, I'm actually Lee, right? What would have been like the most shocking and upsetting thing to hear? I was thinking about that and mulling it over, and it's like, okay, well, something that's like intensely personal, like how you want your remains to be treated, right? Nobody else would know that necessarily, and especially if like Lee's ultimate wishes for her remains was you know, in this case violated, right? Like Jane being called out on it is like even more emotionally crushing, right?
Is that
like,
why you put that in there like that? Just to like twist her knife one more time?
Yeah, it was mostly like Jane 100% got the worst end of the deal. You know, short of Lee, who died, right?
Like, you know, like you do
in the Foundation verse. But you know, we have Jane who at the end of the day, like, didn't even get this conversation because like she's like reaching out for closure. She's reaching out for like her partner who's passed, and at the end of the day, the Foundation just comes and like amnesticizes her because it's like, you know, we can't have her knowing about this thing. She's going to come back and check on the phone, right? It's a whole mess, right? And so she's got to be anesthetized.
Mm-hmm. So, besides some like spare compliments I'll give you from the chat, like Amber being super psyched when they realized what was going on and how clever the writing challenge was there, and Happy Happiny just saying that was freaking awesome. Natasha wants to know exactly what I want to know, which is, Natasha asks, that's such a cool idea. How did this concept come to be?
So I was like trying really hard to write my first SCP because I loved SCP, right? Like for a period of time, I was just, you know, as soon as I found it, I remember reading old copy pastas that eventually turned into SCPs because I was on like Never Again 4chan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like I've been with like the sentiment and like the community for a really long time, and I wanted to produce one of these works. And so my first SCP that I attempted was not very well thought out, and it failed. It didn't work. And so the second one, I really wanted it to work. And so what was really the focus of series 4, right, the 3000s, was like paying attention to stories and like we have these foundation documents, and they're meant to be little windows into the foundation verse. And so how do we extract like very human stories out of this fictional world? And I was thinking, what unsettles me and what unsettles my friends, right? It's like, okay, well, what is something mundane that you don't really think about, that you see pretty often, but if they ended up being weird, like the cell phone trees themselves were already really weird, right? And so my housemate, she recommended, and it's like, well, why don't you write something about those weird cell phone trees that like look like those cell towers that look like trees? And it's like, oh, okay, that's a great idea. I wanted, and so, you know, the process of I have this spark of an idea. I take it to the idea critique forum, workshopped it there, and then, you know, you take it to the drafts and you get greenlit, etc. During the process, there was no green lighting process, right? And now there is. But it was mostly, what can I take that is mundane and make it unsettling? And that's what it was.
Cool. And any inspiration for like the love story, the tragedy here? Because I'll tell you, what you did in the opening is you nailed the technical aspect of an SCP. This is how we contain it. This is what it is. These are the procedures. This is A, B, and C. It's all the jargons there. I love the Leaves Droppers pun. That's one of the better code names for Mobile Task Force.
I love MTF puns. Like, I love Mobile Task Force puns. And I was thinking like, the gardeners would be on this, but like, oh, I wanted to introduce my own FTP or my own Mobile Task Force.
Excellent little subsection you got. And just something that I had a question of while I was reading it that I just found while I was browsing. A Faraday bag. Is that a thing?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was just imagining that the Foundation would have such a technology, but like, I'm kind of like, when I came up with like Faraday bags, it was like, you know, for all of those people out there, who build computers, all of the computer components arrive in these like metal lined foil bags, right, to protect them from static and anti-static bags, right? And so I was imagining like, oh, okay, well, something that you can put your cell phone in and it would block all transmissions. You know, I don't know if that's a real thing. I figure it would be, right?
And at least it's something the Foundation could possibly have. It doesn't break our immersion that they have a technology we don't have.
Yeah. Like the clinical writing, right? I was very obsessed with clinical writing when I first produced this. And I got a lot of help from a lot of the Foundation like veterans, like the Great Hippo reviewed my article, and I was over the moon because the Great Hippo is definitely one of my favorite authors on the site. And I really took a lot of his advice to heart. Like on his author page, he has a bunch of advice for writers, and like just by going off of them. Now I'm plugging the Great Hippo, but
everyone in the chat, go to the Great Hippo's author page to get some writing tips, because it's waiting for you.
They're so good. They're so good. It's like, A, never waste the reader's time. You know, B, like think about, you know, like concision, right? And so like, how did I get the article to sound very, very clinical, very, very like, this is a real document, right? I kept thinking and going back onto these themes, like, okay, I want the article to really reflect like what it is in universe, right? Like, what are SCPs in universe? And what they are is they're documents meant to, at a glance, for researchers to review the document and know how to handle these potentially dangerous, anomalous objects and entities, right? And so writing from the perspective of a researcher and being like, this is what's important to write down. Nothing else is important, right? I don't have to talk about the thing. I don't have to talk about its color. I don't have to talk about, you know, how tall they get. I only have to worry about like, okay, we just need to make sure that it doesn't spread, and we need to make sure that, you know, we don't destroy any of it.
If I put you on the spot, because clinical tone is everybody's challenge when they come into the SCP Wiki, what suggestions, one or numerous depending on how much you have in mind, would you give people who are trying to learn how to write in the Foundation's clinical tone?
I would say every letter matters. Every word matters, right? For something to sound cold and clinical, which is how I want my SCPs to sound, right? Don't waste words, right? Describe something as accurately and as necessary as possible, but not a single word more.
Nice. Yeah, you get a lot of people who are like, his very sharp, dripping with blood claws, and you're like, you don't even know that. It has claws. They're like 3 centimeters long, made of a keratin-like substance.
Yeah. Like, and also it's like every detail that I decided to ultimately like include in the article, it was like, does this help you identify the anomaly, right? Does it help you contain the anomaly? Because any kind of unnecessary information, right? Like going back to this in-universe research thing, right? It's like if you're a researcher and you're just like a Foundation personnel and there's like a containment breach happening, right? And like you load up this article on the database to see what's happening, and it's like 1 billion pages long with like a bunch of like flowery language, and none of it helps you in the present situation. Like, what is that document doing? What kind of purpose does it serve? And it's like, no, this needs to help you. This is a technical document that's supposed to help you do your job.
This is the thing that people run to when there's a breach and go, how do I fix this? Help me.
How do I unbreach this? Or they're like, oh, something crazy weird is happening in the Foundation, right? And it's like, where do I go? I do the research. I like figure out what I'm doing to like figure out how to contain it, right? I don't need your life story. I need the recipe.
Now, a lot of SCP authors, when they are first coming in the wiki, struggle to get critique and use that critique in ways. How was your critique process? Where did you get it? How did it change your article throughout the process?
Initially, it didn't have... Okay, so that's actually a really interesting question, because initially I didn't have the story with Lee and Jane. I knew that the trees spread, and I knew that they acted as cell towers, and I knew that they also transmitted something weird. But at first I had them like exist off far into the wilderness, and then like military found it or something. But the critique was like, is this what's interesting? What kind of interesting, like, how does it affect people? Like, how do you bring in the human element? And that was like a really important point of feedback. I think getting critique is pretty hard, because it's hard to ask for criticism and then receive it, right? Like, because criticism's not fun, right?
We've all been there.
You don't want to, like, you don't want to put your heart and soul and spend a lot of time on something and then only someone to come along and be like, this is bad, right? You need to work on it more. Nobody wants to be told that, but I don't want to be like, if somebody's like berating you, definitely don't put up with it, right? But if somebody's like if somebody's taking the time out of their day to tell you what they like and don't like about something that you've produced, right? Like, maybe, take it to heart. It was hard to get over the ego of like, I produced this, I spent time on this, why isn't it good? Why don't you like it, right? And it's like maybe it's not good. Like, maybe you should really take some space and like understand the desires. And of course, you shouldn't always focus on producing things that other people like. You should focus on producing things that you like. But
I mean, best case scenario, you get both.
Best case scenario, you get both. And then, you get an article that stays up.
Because you're right. There is an ego in, this is the story I wanted to tell. And it's especially prudent to kind of check that at the door, because it is very easy to get the artist's sense of self, sense of ego wrapped up in their art. And especially when you're starting, I guess it never gets easier. But when you make something, you want to say, I made this, here it is. And when everyone says, no, this is trash, what are you doing? Thankfully, in the SCP community, we're all hobbyist editors as well as hobbyist writers. So most of the people on the wiki are decent at not being jerks, telling you what and why, and this is why I feel that's a problem, without, just stomping on your hearts and dreams.
Yeah. A lot of it was like reading, like, I worked really hard on the clinical tone here. And like, how did I get this clinical tone? And it's like, I read a ton of Series 1, right? Like people have really mixed feelings about Series 1, because Series 1 is like, you have hits, you have classics, and then you have things that are just, they're just some guy, right?
There's this guy, he doesn't do anything, and whatever.
And he's anomalous, right? And but the point is, like, from Series 1, you get a lot of Series 1 and 2. You get a lot of like the development of the jargon. You get a lot of the development of the sentence structure and the syntax that is used throughout the wiki. And it's like the later ones, with the 3000s and the 4000s, they're getting longer and longer and longer. And I had this feeling when I was writing it, where it was like, oh, well, my article won't be liked unless it's of a certain length. And I don't like that. I don't think that's true. I think that there are a lot of very effective short articles, but given the existing base of articles, you're going to have a really hard time like carving out your own niche and carving out like the story that you want to tell without making it distinctive, right? And that's the challenge.
It is such an interesting line of thought you're going down there, and I'm going to elaborate on a little for the audience, because Series 1 is the beginning of the art form, so to speak. And so when you do a kind of art for 10 years, it's going to evolve naturally. You look at Series 1 and the articles are, Abel. We had a great stream on this where 076, Abel, is just, here's a guy who's very hard to kill and wants to kill everyone. And from there, people took that and made a bunch of different tales about Abel, and that's what fleshed it out. And ever since Series 1, Series 2 ended, we got on and on, articles tended to have to be their own self-contained stories. You're not expecting someone to come in and elaborate on you. You better give us something from square one, and maybe we'll take it and run with it. And it's
like,
go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say like the Red Sea object, which is I think 093.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Red Sea object 093. You have like a few snippets of like the exploration logs on the article itself, but then like the subsequent pages where the meat of the actual story that's being told through 093 is in these separate logs and these separate tales. And, I've never written a tale myself, but I figure that like people who are struggling with writing an SCP article should probably give tales a try, because at least you get practice of like trying to imagine the story you're trying to tell, right? It's like this is I always figured that writing SCPs were kind of like writing a sonnet, because it's like it's a very restrictive format, right? And then anything that deviates from that format must deviate with reason and with purpose, or it must stay inside. And I for this article for 3421, I decided to like stay inside, and I took the time to learn what those lines were.
God, I have two good tangents that I got to remember them both real quick. Number one thing in particular about your article I love is how, in the first half, it is intensely Foundation technical. It is very cleanly, this is an SCP document. And then you get to the story of the people, and you added that human element like you talked about with the critiquers, but there is this underlying uncomfortableness in my soul reading your article because this cell phone tree is manipulating this person's emotions, manipulating everything they have about their just recently perished partner. And it's a cold survival instinct. It is simply, I need more trees. Go put your phone in a park so it becomes a new tree. It doesn't care that your partner just died. And that's my soul.
Yeah, it was really crushing because it was like I was thinking about cell phones in general, and it was like, well, how do cell phones work? Well, the cell phones talk to a cell tower, and then the cell tower does, techno magic that no layperson knows about. And it was like, well, these are intensely private conversations. It was like between, two girlfriends who are going through a really tough time, and then the tree is like listening in on all of this, right? And like it's unclear. Like something that I received as a point of critique was whenever you're trying to, this is an aside now, if you're trying to write an SCP, try to look through the wiki and find stuff that's really close to what you're like the stories that you're trying to tell, and then figure out like what kind of things that you can differentiate this. So like before writing this and before actually like hitting up a draft, I read a bunch of plant-based SCPs. Like I hit up every single like intelligent plant SCP and see how they did it.
Yeah, there's like a tag for plant SCPs that you can just like click on.
Yeah, plant is a tag, arboreal is a tag, right? And so like knowing what's out there is good for I'm always of this position that constraints breed creativity. And so in being restricted and in knowing like what other ground has been covered, you get to know like it informs you. And it's like, these are the directions that are interesting. These are the directions that we can go in to get more story.
I have an aside from a previous conversation I'm going to inject before I get to the aside that goes from what you just said.
Okay, let's do it.
The previous aside was that we talked about how there are not short articles on the wiki as much anymore because stories tend to be longer in more series. And specifically, me as a YouTuber who does read these for art purposes, I hate long articles. If I can do 3 articles in the time of one DJ Cactus article, it's not worth it, man. So,
yeah, it's rough, DJ.
And because of that, when I write my articles, I have the same inkling, which is I want it to be short. I want to get this done. I want to tell my story and be finished. You'll look at I do have one that's 8,500 words because that's my one tale and it goes on forever. But writing short stories and figuring out how to just use the format and insert, like 3302 was my cold post challenge. I'm not going to get critique and I'm going to see it if it survives. 5886 was my recent, I just want to write something short. Do not get on me about length, everybody. And no one got on me about it length. They all said, hey, you told the story. It's as much as it needs to be. You don't have to go long, everybody in the audience. You just have to get your point across.
You have to, definitely, don't think that, length is an absolute requirement because it's just, what are you getting out of that length, right? Like, what are you telling a compelling story? Are you adding something interesting to into the Foundation verse, right? That's the primary concern.
And don't think that I'm hating on long articles because, anything that was entered in the 5,000 contest, most of those were giant. But, 5,000 is a frickin' ride. It's wonderful. 5,004 is another Cactus article, and it's long and it's hilarious. Long is fine, just don't limit yourself to one kind of thing. And that brings me to my other aside, based on what you just said, which is read other articles that are like your thing, but This is a skill that I should have learned in school in my theater script analysis classes, but being that I sucked at college and dropped out of fucking theater school, come on.
It's okay.
I've learned it on the way, which is critical analysis and breaking down what you're reading. And all you have to ask is one question. Why is that there? Critical analysis is simply just saying, why did they put that sentence there? There has to be a reason that particular sentence exists. Because if you can cut it, you probably should cut it.
If you can cut it, you gotta cut it. That's the other like concrete piece of advice that I have for aspiring clinical tone people. If you can cut it, you gotta cut it, right? Because it's both for the reader who's not a Foundation employee and also for the in-universe Foundation employees, right? It's like, people might be reading these on their lunch break, and like you have like articles that are whole novels, which are great, right? Like they're full of twists and turns and great characterizations and like very good creeping atmosphere, right? That you can build with really long articles. But like, yeah, like with all of the audio logs collapsed, right? SCP-3421 is like it fits on one page. You have you have everything that's required to it, required to describe it. And it's just like, what is it? It's a weird cell phone tower. Like, you've seen these are weird, right? And then beyond it, I was working really hard to develop like, okay, but like, what are the serious implications what are the human implications for this weird thing existing? And it's like, it's listening in on your private conversations. It's going to manipulate you emotionally to get what it wants. It doesn't even know, like, it's hard to even tell whether or not the tree knows what it's saying, right? Like at the end where it's like, the tree is like saying, I love you, right? Like, does it really? Or is it just saying that because it heard Lee say it?
I was about to say, the question of sapience or sentience is big in this article because you do not mention it in the documentation.
Yeah. In the discussion, it was like, I had a lot of like, it was a lot of like tone shifts. The article went through a lot of iterations. And then not to mention just the technical challenge of creating, like, of having the regular conversations and then only taking the weird conversations and piecing it together. It was a lot of back and forth, and it was a lot of like it was like I did like the last one first almost, and I was like, okay, so what does the tree need to be able to say at this last conversation, right? And I need to make sure that for all of these things and words and statements that I want the tree to say, Lee also has to say it in like a organic conversation up top. And that was like a challenge. Additionally, writing two voices is a challenge. And I think what was like interesting was like I wrote a bunch of things. I wrote it all. I wrote out this conversation like I wanted to write out, and then I isolated one of the voices. Right, I isolated voice one, and then I was like, okay, I left voice one alone mostly, and then voice two, I was like, okay, Lee doesn't use contractions, right? They don't say what was it? It was like instead of don't, they say do not, right? Or like trying trying to separate out like the voices and making them distinct from each other so it sounds like two different people was a challenge. And that challenge was met with like isolating one and then like setting rules. It's like, how does this person talk? Like, what words do they use and what words do they not use? And that was like a really effective tool to fall back on when trying to differentiate them.
Question. Now that you got me thinking about it, so the tree does use contractions, right?
I don't know, actually. there still might be errors in it because of the way that the like I read the article on occasion and I go back and I make a few changes and be like, oh well, it'd be more interesting if the tree said this, right? And then I'd have to go
love
in
the
and,
SCP wiki.
Yeah, because it's a living document. Like as soon as the nice bar at the top came out, the advanced like containment class system came out, I was like, that's great. I'm taking that. I'm going to use it. And so I updated my article like a year after it was done to include this new bar that's like very fun for me.
I was wondering because I knew that came out a little later, and when I saw it on your article, I was like, did we have that back then?
Nope.
Upgrade.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's see. I think I've got all my questions. Is there anything else we haven't covered in the stream that you would like to get out there?
Let's see. Hold on. Great Hippo. He has a piece of, where was it? Hold on. I'm going to read something from the Great Skippo's author page. Whenever you compare yourself to another author and find yourself lacking, just remember this. Your unique background and set of experiences equips you to write stories they can't. There are stories inside of you that only you and you alone can tell. No one can take that away from you.
Very, very poignant. Yes.
So if you have an idea for an SCP, like don't let anybody stop you from exploring it. But don't discount their feedback and their critiques, because what they want to do for you is not gatekeep you out of this, wonderful online new weird community. They want your article to succeed. They want it to be of a good quality, something that you can be proud of too. So that's my advice.
And when they feed you their article, they will expect the very same. They'll want you to tell them what works, but especially what doesn't.
Yeah.
Standard final question. You mentioned your articles. We got 3421 and 4457, which if you want to check out glewmie's work, you can go there. What is a favorite or a couple favorite articles, not your own, that you'd like to share with the audience?
I have 25 articles that I love, and I can't even send them. But I can post it to the Discord, the Site42 Discord.
So that will be available there, and I will try and copy and paste it to the YouTube chat. I could see if that happens.
But I think, gosh, I have so many favorites. I love IKEA. I love Laugh is Fun. Ronald Reagan cut up while talking. The Red Knife is one of my favorites. It's
3041. The Red Knife is fantastic.
It's one that like legitimately scared me when I read it. But yeah, like if you're looking for good, nice, iterative, like articles that build as you read it and like crescendo, right? The Great Hippo, wonderful author who I took this like this format of like building audio logs, right? And that was like a major inspiration.
The chat just really wants confirmation on the so the tree was this is essentially how the trees reproduce in general, correct?
Yeah, the trees are supposed to so you know the thing is the trees are sending out broadcasts, and they're trying to, and when the broadcasts like infect a cell phone, then the cell phone's like active, and then when the cell phone is buried, and the trees are always constantly trying to get people to bury the cell phone, right?
Oh my god. Oh my god, I just
Huh?
had a thought.
Oh yeah?
The trees are, so the trees work as normal cell phone towers, and while they are doing that, they are skimming your messages so they can emotionally manipulate you into planting your phone. And if you don't want your phone being skimmed by cell phone trees, maybe you should talk to our sponsor, NordVPN. I'm just kidding, we're not sponsored. But perfect time for a VPN advertisement for one of the many that are out there.
Yeah, end-to-end encryption. That was another thing. Actually, I'm sorry, I just keep dragging this on. That was another thing that I was really worried about how the Foundation was going to be containing these people. And it's like, oh, this tree needs to be held at a remote site, and everything that needs, everything having to do with this tree must be transmitted with end-to-end encryption, and like going really, really hardcore on like the technical aspects of containing it, when that wasn't even the interesting part of the story. Right. And so like when we first start doing clinical writing, and we first start doing writing containment articles for the Foundation, right, we tend to focus like, oh, it needs a 2-foot thick titanium box and of this and this length. And it's like, okay, sure. But like, is that the interesting part? Right. Is that what gets you going? Like, is that what you think other people want to read? And it's like, not always. Right. It's more important. It's like, how does this anomaly affect the people around it? How does the anomaly tell us more about the world it exists in, right?
A very interesting jumping point from what you just did. And going back, don't worry if you keep elongating this, because as long as I and the audience is interested, we're going for the right length. And
let's go.
The audience is having a really good time with our conversation about the writing process. So you and I, we're killing it tonight. Good job. Good stream.
Nice.
One thing about containment procedures that's very important, because yes, you're right. Don't get too deep into the minutia, because often on the wiki, it is common for people who are reading to just completely skip the conprocs. They skip the containment procedures completely because there's usually nothing useful to the story in there. And the thing I'm jumping off with is, if you're writing your conprocs, your special containment procedures, try to use that as your foreshadowing. And this is really easy. I can use one of mine as an example because it's deadly short. 5886... for those who are unfamiliar, is the Flash, but he can't turn his powers off, so he's sad. Because when you move faster than the speed of light, you can't really communicate with anybody or take a bus, and your life kind of sucks. And so the special containment procedures for the Ballad of Jim Biggio, SCP-5886, is very simply, it's seemingly self-contained within a humanoid containment chamber at Site-42. Testing has been suspended until feasible means of doing so are found. And you're like, what do you mean it's self-contained? What do you mean we can't test it? And so that tells you what is going on.
Definitely. Like the major thing is like going back to this idea that every word is valuable and all time is precious, right? You don't want your special containment procedures to be like wasting this person's time. The special containment procedures are your opportunity to hook the reader in and being like, here's what's weird, right? Like, I know that I'm guilty of this when I'm hitting the random button and reading the new articles. I skip right to the description to know what we're reading about, right? But like a well-written conprox is like, what are we reading about? Like, what's important? What's the struggle that Like what? Like these are not just regular containment procedures, which is remove it from the public and keep it alive, right? That's the foundation standard containment procedures. These are the special containment procedures. What is unique to containing this anomaly, right? And so like taking the opportunity of this format to like really make every word count, right? And this is a place that like you'll find more success in your articles if you take the time to flesh it out.
And it gives your, as I said, foreshadowing. You can tell people the limits of your SCP's abilities. You can clue them in as to all the questions people ask, like how hot is SCP-457? What are the abilities of X, Y, and Z? That's really contained to your containment procedures if you do it right, because you can say, okay, we need it to be able to handle this much heat. It needs to be a fluid of this viscosity for certain reasons. That is where your like foreshadowing and character building can really be if you utilize it properly.
Yeah, and so like in this article for 3421, we have the it's like, well, what is the containment procedures for these trees? Because when you load up the article, what do you see? You see the big ACS bar, and you see a picture of the anomaly, and so it's like, okay, so what? That's the first thing that hits you when you're consuming this article, and then the second thing is like you're going down the list, and it's like, what can we say about this? It's like, okay, well, these are alive. We need to keep them alive. We need to keep them away from sunlight, and we need to, make sure that it doesn't communicate outwards, right? And so when we talk about like purpose-built Faraday cages, like why are they in these cages? And it's like it's so that they can't send more transmissions, right? And like I guess it relies on the reader to know what a Faraday cage is, but like you're on a sci-fi you're on a sci-fi website. You should know, right?
And if not, you can open another tab and get Google involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Amber Nelson is saying using something like Faraday bag sounds like a thing. In context, we can figure out what it basically does. Yeah, because it's just like a Faraday cage, right? It's supposed to block the transmissions.
What is her name on the wiki? Her name on the wiki is glewmie, spelled Glewmie, and you can actually see that in the description where glewmie's Twitch link is posted, so you can visit them after the stream.
Yes, please visit me at my gory gallery, glewmie's gory gallery, where we play horror games. I'm on tomorrow at 7 p.m.
What are you streaming?
We're probably going to be finishing up Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which is a game from 2004.
Classic.
But then we'll play something else later this week. I stream Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeehaw. Any last things before we sign off?
No. Believe in yourself.
Believe in yourself. Work hard. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, glewmie.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm going to turn you on mute, and we'll chit-chat after I sign off, just as a
Sounds
final
great.
debrief. So goodbye, glewmie, off here. And for everybody in the audience, thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something about writing about the wiki. If you really like the show, make sure you like, share, subscribe, Patreon, all that good stuff. We need all the help we can get in these times. And we will see you at our next anomalous broadcast from Site42. Cue banner. Science man, containing all the monsters he can. Will he die? Probably. Will he come back? Probably. Why is that? Because there is no canon.